Chief of the South African Navy, Vice Admiral Lobese, Chief Human Resources, Lieutenant General Sichongaye, Major General Nyangasya, representing Chief of the South African Army, Deputy Chief of the South African Navy, Rear Admiral Mutana, Deputy Chief of Logistics, Major General Mulauzi, Flag Officer Fleet, Rear Admiral Matsani, Chief Director, Maritime Strategy, Rear Admiral Komone, Chief of Naval Staff, Rear Admiral Makanya, Chief Director, Transformation Management, Major General Maso, Chaplain General, Brigadier General Reverend Masoyu, Defense Advisor, Federal Republic of Nigeria, Commodore Navy Gwaska, representing Chief of the Chief of the Nigerian Navy, members of the Service System Divisions, Command Councils, General and Flag Officers, Acting Chief Defense Material, Mr. Lebelo, Defense Attaché, Republic of Angola, Colonel Prata, Defense Attaché, Republic of Korea, Commander Park, members of the Fleet Command Board, Senior Manager, Institute of Maritime Technology, Dr. Malaza, Warrant Officer of the South African National Defence Force, Master Chief Warrant Officer Mchacheni, Master at Arms of the Navy, Senior Chief Warrant Officer Molefe, Chief Executive Officer of the South African International Maritime Institute, Mr. Mati, Mr. Mtati, Transnet National Port Authority, Acting Chief Executive Officer, Advocate Defeato, Chief Harbour Master of the Port of East London, Captain Lekala, Captains of Industries, representatives of the institutions of higher learning present here today, members of the academia, our distinguished guest speakers, chairperson of the Spouses Forum, Mrs. Lobese, and all spouses present here today, teachers and learners of the George Randall High School and Ngwenyachi High School, members of different media institutions, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. I am Captain Ntwani Leshache, and I will be the program director for this segment of the celebrations of World Hydrography Day, hosted here in the Buffalo City Metropolitan Municipality town of East London. Indeed, what a truly magnificent sight it is to see you here today to join us in celebrating such an immense global day of significance, which is World Hydrography Day 2025, with the theme, Seabed Mapping, Enabling Ocean Action. In order for us to commence, I would formally like to request the Chief of the South African Navy, Vice Admiral Mondole Bisi, to the podium for the opening and welcoming remarks. Please, ladies and gentlemen, let's give Chief of the South African Navy a warm round of applause.
Thank you, Program Director, for the opportunity afforded me to address the World Hydrographic Day lecture. I thought that there was going to be an opening prayer by a padre, but I think that with hydrography, nothing gets prayed for. Chief Human Resources General Sichongaye, Major General Nyangasia, representing Chief of the South African Army, Deputy Chief of the Navy, Rear Admiral Mhlano, Deputy Chief of Logistics, Major General Mlaudzi, Flag Officer Fleet, Rear Admiral Matsane, Chief Director Maritime Strategy, Rear Admiral Ngomonde, Chief of Naval Staff, Rear Admiral Makanya, Chief Director Transformation Management, Major General Maso, Chaplain General, Brigadier General Reverend Masweu, Defense Advisor to the Federal Republic of Nigeria, Commodore Gwaska, representing the Chief of the Nigerian Army, also of the Nigerian Navy, members of the Service and Division Command Councils, generals and flag officers, Acting Chief Defense Material, Mr. Libelo, Defense Attaché of the Republic of Angola, Colonel Prata, Defense Attaché of the Republic of Korea, Commander Park, members of the Fleet Command, Senior Manager, Institute of Maritime Technology, Dr. Malaza, Warrant Officer of the SANDF, Master Chief Warrant Officer Mchacheni, Master at Arms of the Navy, Senior Chief Warrant Officer Mulefe, Chief Executive Officer of the South African International Maritime Institute, Mr. Mtati, TNPA Acting Chief Executive Officer, Advocate Tifeto, Chief Harbour Master of the Port of East London, Captain Lekala, Captains of Industry, the representatives of the Institutes of Higher Learning present here today, members of the academia, our distinguished guest speakers, the chairperson of the Navy Spouses Forum, my wife Noklandi, and all spouses present here today, teachers and learners of George Randall High School and Bunyati High School, members of the different media houses, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Ladies and gentlemen, if I may ask, what has brought us together here today in East London? The answer is World Hydrography Day. It is here today that to celebrate the important role hydrography plays in ensuring that our seaborne activities are secured and safe and safeguarding our precious marine resources. For most people, if you ask them, what is hydrography? You will struggle to get an answer. This is largely because the work that hydrographic surveyors do often takes place in remote areas, both along our coast and further offshore. And if you are not on a survey platform, you don't get to see the equipment used to collect data or the process involved in getting the raw data transformed into usable products. I will not attempt to explain the art and science of hydrography today. That task I will leave up to the national hydrographer, Captain Nicolette Leroux, and the other guest speakers who work closely with the Navy and are users of the services offered by the South African Navy's Hydrographic Office. What we did with this event was to bring hydrography to the people of East London to make it more accessible. Hopefully, we will inspire our youth to pursue careers in the maritime sector, whether it is in the private or public sector. For those who are still busy with their studies, be it at school or university level, I hope you will leave here with a renewed passion for the science, having listened to our speakers and seeing our scientific principles and seeing how our scientific principles are applied. You will also have the opportunity to see the exhibitions and visit ships. The vessels are berthed in the harbor, our frigates, SS Amatola, and the two multi-mission inshore patrol vessels, SS King Shaka Zulu and SS Adam Kok III. These multi-mission inshore patrol vessels are in fact the newest addition to the South African Navy. But for the purpose of our visit to East London, the smallest of the vessels here is in fact the most important one, the survey motorboat known as SMB-1. She is a critical tool in our arsenal and was purpose-built to conduct hydrographic surveys as determined by our national charting needs. This brings me back to World Hydrography Day. World Hydrography is a concept was adopted by the International Hydrographic Organization, of which we are a member state, in 2005 and supported by the United Nations General Assembly in the Resolution 1630, Oceans and Law of the Sea. The date of 21st June was selected because it coincided with the founding of the International Hydrographic Organization. Worldwide, nations use World Hydrography Day as an opportunity to raise awareness about hydrography and how it plays a role in improved knowledge of the seas and oceans. Each year, member states to the International Hydrographic Organization can submit a proposal for a theme for World Hydrography Day. Member states then vote on the proposal submitted, and the proposal with the most votes becomes the theme. The theme for this year's celebration is Seabed Mapping, Enabling Ocean Action. And it underscores the critical role of ocean mapping in achieving sustainable ocean use. It is estimated that only 26.1% of the ocean floor has been chartered to modern standards. These statistics reveal not just the vastness of our ocean, but also the significant gaps in our understanding. When we talk about vastness of our oceans, here are some facts and figures to put into perspective the numbers we are talking about. The Eastern Cape is the second largest province in the country and makes up to 13.8% of our land area. At 165,580 square kilometers, if we consider our total sea area, inclusive of the exclusive economic zone, it is 1,553,000 square kilometers. That is an area just over 9 times larger than the whole of the Eastern Cape province. Seabed mapping is foundational to informed decision-making across industries and environmental initiatives alike, bolstering the world blue economy. What do we mean when we say blue economy? The World Bank defines it as the sustainable use of ocean resources for economic growth, improved livelihoods and jobs while preserving the health of ocean ecosystem, whilst the European Commission defines it as all economic activities related to oceans, seas and coasts. Seabed mapping bolsters the blue economy through sustainable maritime energy, supporting fisheries and coastal tourism, protecting biodiversity and monitoring ocean changes. Proper hydrographic information is essential for safe navigation, especially in our complex and sometimes challenging waters. It enables us to chart our ocean's depths, familiarize ourselves with our shores, and protect our maritime interests. The International Hydrographic Organization's strategic plan emphasizes active participation in international initiatives related to the knowledge and sustainable use of the ocean, aiming to increase the use of hydrographic data for the benefit of society. Initiatives like Seabed 2030, a collaborative project between the Nippon Foundation and JEPCO, which stands for General Bathymetric Charts of the Ocean, aims to inspire the complete mapping of the world's ocean floor by 2030. Such efforts are crucial in providing baseline information in support of nautical charting, a traditional asset of international hydrographic organization standardization in maritime surveying and cartography. As we delve deeper into discussions and collaborations, let us remember that seabed mapping is not just a scientific endeavor, but a commitment to the sustainable future of our oceans. I also want to emphasize the importance of collaboration in hydrography. Furthermore, another crucial component of our maritime capabilities is the imperative of having a survey ship in the South African Navy, which is currently being built at Sandok Austral Shipyard in Durban, even although it is taking longer than planned due to some industrial challenges and complications which are being addressed. This capability is badly needed as we struggle with climate change, conservation issues, and sustainable management of our ocean resources. As we navigate in the complexity of today's naval presence, where the role of hydrography and proper maritime information should not be exaggerated, investing in this capability is an investment in our future. It will allow us to obtain reliable hydrographic data, monitor trends in our coastal ecosystem, and experiment on underwater features critical to navigation and defense needs. A survey ship is not just a ship. It is an important asset that enhances operational effectiveness and safety. It provides us with valuable information we need to chart our waters, ensuring safe transit to our ships and protecting our maritime interests. In a global landscape where maritime security is paramount, having the capability to conduct accurate surveys is part of our mandate. Moreover, possessing a dedicated survey ship enhances our ability to continue collaborating with our nations and institutions for simultaneous maritime activities. It makes us a regional naval power, and it also allows us to exchange precious intelligence and experience with our allies and friends. Ladies and gentlemen, this capability not only enhances our relations, but also shows our dedication to offering secure and safe seas for all in our area of responsibility. In conclusion, let us appreciate that the work we have before us in our seas is huge and requires the collective efforts of all stakeholders, government agencies, research institutions, and the private sector. Together, we can leverage technology, combine our expertise, and expand our capacities to better explore and protect our maritime environments. Together, through shared knowledge and concerted action, we can chart a course toward a more informed and responsible stewardship of our maritime environment. Whilst we continue celebrating World Hydrography Day, let's also recognize the dedication and hard work of our hydrographic teams. Your hard work and dedication to excellence in data collection and analysis propel our mission. You are the unsung heroes who support us in national security and ocean sustainability. Lastly, I welcome each of you to join us today's lecture and discussion. Share your suggestions and hear new ideas. Together, let us improve our hydrography knowledge and skills and remain the leaders in this vital profession. Ladies and gentlemen, I hereby officially declare the World Hydrography Day lecture and all the celebrations ahead open, and hereby offer the best wishes to all the speakers and panelists as we all look forward to the lessons prepared for us present here today. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Chief of the South African Navy, for the opening address. And I would like to draw from your opening address before I invite the next speaker. And before that, I would like to acknowledge my omission on the part of protocols. In our midst, we've got General Officer Commanding Lock Support Formation, Major General Fanny. General, you're welcome. And the school that has just joined us as well, welcome and enjoy this session. I hope it will be very fruitful. And have your pens and papers. At the end of the session, there will be a test. Chief of the Navy said, the International Hydrographic Organization actually gave us a very powerful theme to rally behind this year. From your speech, I do acknowledge that for too long, the ocean depths have held their secrets. However, through the tireless effort of hydrographic surveyors worldwide, we are slowly illuminating these mysteries. We are doing that by collecting, transforming all the raw data into actionable data. One of the points you raise, collaborative effort, is what is going to actually make us win this effort in terms of this effort that we put into illuminating and mapping our seabed. And it is along those lines that I would like to invite the next speaker. You will see with our guest speakers here, we've got members from various sectors within maritime industry who work together with us as a hydrographic office and Institute of Higher Learning, the other government departments. The first speaker that I'm going to be calling to the podium to come and present to us is from Transnet National Port Authorities. That is Captain Naresh Suna. A quick and brief profile of Captain Naresh Suna. He is a senior manager and vessel traffic services in the Harbour Master's Office, in the Chief Harbour Master's Office at Transnet Port Authorities of South Africa. His maritime experience actually is quite vast. He's been in this industry for 37 years. In short, he indicated to me that if he was to give me his CV, we will be here the whole day. However, the brief information that he would like to share with you is that he actually started when he was part of the 12th of the fast track pilot training program personnel that started the journey in 1999, after which he became the VTS manager for Durban. And then he served as a harbour master in the port of Mossel Bay in 2005, where he set up the Harbour Master's Office and then moved on to Port Elizabeth, I think again, Port of East London in 2009. And there he was promoted to Senior Manager and Vessel Traffic Services in 2014 at TNPA Head Office to oversee all centralized projects in terms of dangerous goods safety and navigation, VTS information systems implementation and climate change initiative. He has also participated, sir, in other national and international conferences, invited by the IMO to partake in all those meetings, and he still attends those meetings by invite from the Department of South African Department of Transport, and he has we are waiting to indulge you in your presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Program Director, and all protocol observed. Good morning to the present here today. Like Program Director mentioned my biography, but I think something I left out is a time I spent in the Navy as well when I first started. We were required to spend 3 months prior to coming to serving our cadetship in Transnet. And that was in Simonstown from 1988, 87, 700. It's over 3 months, so it was a long time, but it was a very memorable time in the Navy as well. So yeah, it's an honor for me to be here present to present to you the World Hydrography Day in terms of ports and the importance of depth management. Yeah, we've come a long way. I think in my 37 years, there's been a lot of experiences, and my presentation today is going to deal with the aim of what the Hydrography Day entails. It's to create awareness of the importance of hydrography and also in port areas for vessels transporting cargo between South African ports and other international trading ports as well. So my scope dealing with the South African port system, TNPA core functions, the TNPA shipping movements for the last 10 years, TNPA dredging services, fleet and hydro surveys, unequal clearance system, impact on berth depths, and collaboration with state agencies. So the South African port system basically entails 8 of the commercial ports in South Africa. There's also the port of Port North as well on the west coast, which does not deal so much with commercial cargo, but mainly the mining, on the mining industry side, deep sea mining. So on the east coast we have the port of Richards Bay, which deals primarily with dry cargo, which is your coal, and then liquid bulk, as well as other break bulk cargoes as well. Most of the ports are multi-cargo ports, but they also specialize in certain cargoes, like Richards Bay, your bulk, and Saldanha is also bulk port as well to iron ore. And then you've got your Durban, Port Elizabeth, Nuha, and Cape Town that specializes in containers, but they also have other cargoes as well. And then we also just to mention, I think, the ship repair side, which we have the Port of Durban, East London, and Cape Town. However, there are smaller facilities that are in the ports of Saldanha, Port Elizabeth, and Mossel Bay as well, for the smaller fishing industry. So there's various ports dealing with various types of cargo. The automotive as well, in Durban, East London, where Mercedes-Benz is housed, and Port Elizabeth as well. So there's a lot of connectivity between, from the land side that you look at the green in terms of port rail corridors that come towards the ports. And remember, the ports are a gateway to the economy itself, where there's close to 90% of cargo that's being transported. And the ships that carry these cargoes are very deep indeed, so that the hydrography part of it is very important in terms of making sure your depths are accurate and you also have adequate anechoic clearance when these ships come in, they're not run aground. So this is a little bit of the functions of the National Ports Authority, and these are not all, these are just some of them. In terms of the maritime services, we're basically responsible for the safe, efficient, effective, and economic functioning of the national port system. And on the maritime services, we deal with pilotage, marine pilotage, towage, and berthing services. With the lighthouse and navigation services, we service and maintain lighthouses and aids to navigation, fixed and floating aids to navigation as well, which is also charted on the navigation charts by the South African National Hydrographic Office. We serve as a port authority and also a regulatory function in terms of port licensing, where we license stevedores and other activities, diving, bunking, and so on, and also do compliance and regulatory functions. We also serve as a landlord and infrastructure, where we provide land or real estate for the function of facilitating cargo movements on the ports, and also provide port infrastructure. And part of the port infrastructure is dredging, which is the removal of sediments that accumulate in the ports through the movement of tides and current and so on. We also, with the collaboration, I think it's important with state agencies like your BMA, Border Management Agencies, your South African Navy, the South African Maritime Safety Authority, Department of Transport, Department of Forestry, Fisheries and Environment, South African National Defence Force, South African Weather Services, the Center for Scientific and Industrial Research. These are but just some of them, but there are more agencies that we also collaborate quite closely. In terms of the shipping movements that come to that visit the ports, this is the movements basically. So it's arrival, departure, as well as sailing from the port. Between 2015-16 to 2024-25, the totals at the bottom, as you will see here, is they were quite high in 2015-16. However, when you look at 2018-21, was the COVID, and then you will see now it has picked up quite significantly from 22 to over 20,000 and thing in terms of shipping, but also the size of ships as well, which has grown over the years. They tend to increase in size for economies of scale, and that's something that the ports have to also accommodate. Look at your depths in the port, look at the dredging, and also accommodating, making wider channels and basins for these vessels to visit. So these are some of the, on the container side, the growth of the container vessels. You will see there's quite significant growth. Right now, we've got ships that are over 400 meters long, 61 meters wide, and a depth of around 16 meters. And there are some of the ports then that can accommodate them around the world. However, remember, it's not just the entrance channel. Our ports, entrance channel are accommodated for that, but you still need a berth as well to berth this vessel. And this is where the importance comes in, I think, in terms of accommodating these larger vessels. But it's not just the issues around the Red Sea and other conflict areas where you can end up with diversions of ships that may be going to the Suez, but now have to navigate down to the Cape Route. And along the way, obviously, there's ports and areas where they need to bunker or do minor repairs or whatever it is. So these are challenges that we face as well as we go along. So the need for accuracy of surveys inside and approaches to the port is very vital. The SA Navy plays a huge role, I think, when it comes to the coastline, where the TNPA takes care of the port inside the port, but the coastline and the outside anchorages and so on are done by the South African Navy and chartered as such. So it's something that people don't realize how important it is, not just for us as well, but also for passing vessels that goes. And remember, the United Nations, there's the UNCLOS called the law of the United Nations is you have to make sure that you have innocent, safe passage for innocent vessels that go past your coastline as well. And being part of IMO and the International Maritime Organization, we also need to abide by all the safety protocols that other countries also abide by as well. So unacute clearance is something that's also very important, I think, to make sure that you have a certain amount of water under the ship, otherwise it cause damage to the ship. There's different ways of calculating unacute clearance and the tides that also take into account for that purpose as well. So this is the MSC with fire. This is one of the largest container vessels that ever visited a South African port. Actually, the port of Durban on the 11th of June, I think it was. About 3 pilots, I think 1 pilot and then 2 assistants there. 4 tugs. This is 400 meters long, 59 meters wide, and at the time it had a draft of 11.7 meters, but the maximum draft can go to about 16 meters as well. You will see another chart just now. I'll show you a table in terms of the entrance channel depths that we have for each port. So the container capacity of this vessel is 19,466, but you have larger ones than these as well, which go up to 24,000, over 24,000. TEUs means 20-foot equivalent unit. That's your size of the containers on board ship. So TNPA Dredging Services also has hydro survey fleet, and these are equipped with equipment as well that assist with survey, single beam as well as multi-beam survey echo sounders and sound velocity profilers as well. So we have 4 of these vessels, smaller vessels that typically sound beams, chartered, and then they get processed by the Hydrographic Office, TNPA Hydrographic Office. But note, this is not just for team purposes only, but it's for international as well, because you have to make sure it's published on the chart, and this is where the Hydrographic Office, Navy Hydrographic Office comes in, where it's charted and published for international use as well. so that international ship captains are well aware of what the depths are in each port before they can arrive. And if should the depth not be according to the chart, then there are temporary notices that are issued by the Hydrographic Office to indicate that the depths are not as per chart, but so that the international community is also aware. Some of the hydrographic survey requirements for the different ports you will see here are basically dealing with the berths, channels, basins, and sand traps. And they have different intervals of carrying out surveys as well as dredging activities as well in these ports. There are dump sites that are identified as well, and this is where the collaboration with the Department of Fisheries, Forestry and Environment comes in. So annually, TNPA needs to make sure that we apply for a dumping permit from the DOW. And this is issued provided the dumping permit or sediment analysis that's done is clean and you're able to dump it at a dump site, designated dump site. And you work quite closely with the DOW in terms of making sure that the sediments that come up from the ports are always of the quality that's required. So the fishing vessels we also have as part of the National Port Authority with 3 bridges and 1 dead river. So we said one is the trade section operator. I'll explain to you what that means just now in the slide. And there's a capacity of 4,500 cubic meters. That's your upper capacity, that's how much sediment or sand you can carry into that. And then you have the remainder as well, which is also a trade section operator. Capacity of 5,500 cubic meters. They basically involve mainly on the channels, SAMSA basins, and also reclamation work. Now, today is a different type of pressure. It's a gap over pressure, which means you can work in more confined spaces, and the capacity is 750 meters, and basically on the berths and in certain sensitive areas. The hallmark is a great level, so this is service behind the bar that actually pulls the sand in the way with us. So how that happens is sometimes with the deep ships and the propellers that are close to these, the harbor bottom, tends to churn up sediment and accumulate in one area. So this is where your high spots are, and this equipment is ideal for that, especially in the port of Durban where you have a very small unequal clearance from the ship. So this is the Italy in the port of East London. You see the hopper is almost like a hatch, you call it, that's opening. It's the opening that collects the sediment and sand. And this is the grab. It's operated by a crane, goes over the side, picks up that and goes into the hopper tank. And once it's filled up, then it goes to the left side and discharges that and comes back and continues doing that as well. So the trailing hopper dredger is basically a vessel also that travels at a slow speed and has the extension out with tail power and it's so that we really back into sand with water that goes into the hopper tank as well. The one that we have also has the ability, which has a power pipe, able to supply that sand activities and so on. So it's good for port, because people want to have Durban is formed in 10, it's done with over 40 megawatt and 20,000, straight down, basically just only anywhere required, because there's no recovery that goes on the west coast, no one on the east coast. We have sediment accumulation in this port. So we have both for the assisting all the ports annually. In terms of the draft, behind this report, the history is about 19.4 meters. But many of this is just at the place in China. Once you go inside on the berth, the berth actually appears and this is not in the power energy here as well. There will be continuous and very take down the most for the deep water ports, basically for the bulk cargoes. This is just a copy of a hydrographic survey through the port of Nuka. If I expand this, if I can, but okay, I'll go into that. So what it basically has is a lot of numbers on this, and with these are the runs that a survey boat that will do, and the different colors indicate what depths they may be at as well. And there's a legend on the right hand side here, which is your red below 10 meters, and then about 15 meters green, and then your dark blue, and then the black as well, which is more clear in terms of design depth. It is closer to design depth. The design depth is the black one at the last thing. So these depths are all at the least depth that you find on the chart itself. And if there's some major change or some major changes in this, dredging services would be deployed to ensure that you get back to design depth. And should you fail, then you need to advise the hydrographic office to make sure that the depths are charted accordingly. So Durban IPOS is an integrated port operation support system which assists us in calculating, working out the wind, current, tide, and so on. But Durban IPOS is an integrated port operation support system which assists us in calculating, working out the wind, current, tide, and so on. But there's underkeel clearance as well, a measurement that's a system that has been developed by the CSR that assists for deeper vessels and vessels that might require tide to come into the port or sail from the port as well. These calculations are done automatically, but it takes into account various factors of the vessel itself, the draft, the squat, depth at the channel itself, and what speed the ship is doing, so that you get accurate tidal windows where you can enter or exit the port. So this is the standards for some of the bathymetry survey that's developed from the International Hydrographic Office. The green one is basically what we use as TNPA because I think it's more critical for initial clearance when you come into the entrance channel or at the berth itself as well. So you could use in the entrance channel 10% of the depth or 5% or 2 meters depending on what size this vessel is as well too and what clearance you require, but also looking at the weather conditions and the swell as well, which is very important because you can end up touching bottom. And I think one typical example is the vessel that was leaving the port of Richards Bay, the Smart, that something like that, close to that actually. So also part of the CSR weather monitoring, we have the wind and the current and tide measurements as well too. That's for each of the ports. We also have public information as well as internal, just for the use of pilots and the port authority. So impacts on the berths your vessel sizes, the drafts that may be too close to the bottom, that move the sediment around, unequal clearance allowances, and type of the bottom, the harbour bottom, the use of bow thrusters versus tugs, the frequency of hydrographic surveys and rain, and climate change and adverse weather conditions, cargo falling into the harbour, compromising the berth, adequate and qualified resources that have to be in place for conducting the surveys and dredging activities as well, and obviously the budgets required from the ports to ensure surveys and dredging activities are conducted frequently and on time. You also have some unforeseen, say a storm comes up and then it might not even be budgeted for, but you need to make sure that once that storm is over, the survey is conducted, and if there is additional sediment in the channel or anywhere else that needs to be removed, as soon as possible to ensure the safety of navigation of ships visiting the port. So adverse weather conditions carry a huge amount or volumes of siltation into the entrance channel and also the berths and the depths as well. Some of the collaboration with the state agencies, when you look at the South African Navy Hydrographic Office, they produce quite a lot of paper and electronic charts for the South African coastline, including the ports as well. We provide timetables, notice to mariners, a list of navigational warnings and publications related to safety of navigation. And marine services and our dredging services are dependent on the SA Navy Hydrographic Office for updated accurate charts for navigational purposes, for local use, and also from port-to-port navigation. They also provide annual timetables to all ports used for tidal calculations and ensuring adequate underwater clearance for ships. The SA Navy actually owns timetables that are installed in each of the 8 ports, and the vessel traffic services use electronic charts for VTS and VTS for traffic management and also controlling, and these are provided by the South African Hydrographic Office. The SA Weather Services provides weather forecasts and alerts and warnings as well for the shipping, and CSR supports and maintains all the weather monitoring equipment under contracts called the wave, wind, current, and tide. Tides are the heartbeat of the ocean. If you look at this, it's like angiogram, you look at your heartbeat. So this is how the tides also operate as well too, because you have low tides and you have high tides, and they are caused by the gravitational pull of the sun and moon on the earth. There are 2 high tides and there are 2 low tides each day, and they are each into 6-hour intervals. You also get your spring tides and then your normal, which are higher than your normal high tides, and then neap tides, which is lower than your normal low tides, which have certain impacts on the depths as well too, that you have available. If you look at all ports here, this is a high tide, and it's close to 1.55 meters. And this information is provided by the South African Hydrographic Office, which covers all
Thank you very much, Captain Sila, for a very informative presentation. Mr. Chairman, that I'll just be brief. You touched with you on what the Chief of South African Navy also already alluded to. Collaborative efforts that is already in existence. Collaborative effort in terms of production. Mr. Chairman, that I'll just be brief. You touched basically on what the Chief of South African Navy also already alluded to, collaborative efforts that is already in existence. Collaborative effort in terms of chat production, collaborative effort in terms
safety is responsibility of all of us. And one of the other things that you mentioned is with time ships have become larger and larger, underkilled garrisons become very important. Thus, the accuracy of information provided by all of us plays a very significant role. We're running a bit behind of station in terms of time, but no pressure to the next speaker. I'll be calling upon the next speaker, who is also a very seasoned mariner. Currently, Captain Mbakaza from South African Maritime Safety Authority. 9 years she has served at sea on a number of commercial ships. Currently, she is working for the South African Maritime Authority. In her 9 years at SAMSA, she has played a vital role in various positions as a ship surveyor, deputy principal officer, actually at the busiest port in Durban, acted as principal officer at the port of Richards Bay. Now she heads the Maritime Safety Authority Sea Watch and Response Unit, which is a 24-hour operational center responsible for ensuring safety of navigation within South African waters and coordinating responses to maritime incidents within South African territory. She is also currently acting regional manager for the SAMSA Western region, overseeing operations in Port Nolloth, Saldanha, and Cape Town offices. Captain Mbagaza, please.
Unlike Captain Suna, only took 37 years today. Good morning. Observe the protocol that has been observed earlier on, and thank you, Program Director, for that wonderful introduction. Yesterday. So I don't have 37 years of experience, at least not yet. Hoping to get there. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for giving me an opportunity to present to you today, representing my organization, the South African Maritime Safety Authority. So my presentation today is titled Seabed Mapping, Enhancing Maritime Safety and Sustainable Ocean Use. To begin with, I would like to introduce them. That is essentially the aim of the presentation and the scope of what the presentation entails. To begin with, I would like to introduce the South African Maritime Safety Authority as an entity of the Department of Transport for maritime safety in South Africa, and it was established by the SAMSA Act 5 of 1998 with those three mandates that you see on the screen. They seem seemingly very small, but then if you were to dissect each and every one of them, they weigh quite heavy. To name a few, this is essentially the legislation that we administer for maritime safety and the protection of our marine environment in South Africa. To name a few, we have the Merchant Shipping Act, which domesticates our international obligations of sailors. We've got our Marine Traffic Act, which is pertinent to the topic today, our Wreck and Salvage Act, amongst many, and the Maritime Zones Act. And you will see there in blue, I've put it distinctly in blue on purpose because this is an SAMSA being one of the members of the SASA organization, and also being appointed managers of the country's Maritime Rescue Coordination Center, is also responsible for the implementation of this piece of legislation. The chief alluded to in his opening remarks. So this is just a picture that alludes to our area of responsibility, which I think the chief alluded to in his opening remarks. But then if you look at our EEZ, the entire volume of our area of responsibility, up to even larger area sector, to 1.5 million square kilometers. But then if you look further, according to the Global SAR plan, that is the piece that South Africa is tasked to look after. Hence, it is a collaborative effort because there is essentially no department or entity in South Africa that will be able to coordinate and respond to that area alone. And also other bilateral agreements with other states also becomes key when it comes to that. So the total area of that search and rescue region, compared to just the 1.5 square kilometers of our EEZ, is 27. The states also becomes key when it comes to that. So the total area of that search and rescue region, compared to just the 1.5 square kilometers of our EEZ, is 27 million search and rescue kilometers. As you can see, it spans from the mainland all the way down. The last speaker alluded to South Africa being key to enabling global trade because it's one of the primary trade routes globally. So the last speaker alluded to South Africa being key to enable us at SAMSA. It's not only about the vessels that are coming to all South African ports, but also those that are on innocent passage, as Captain Sinatha alluded to. So safety of all the vessels that we are filling in from the east, the west, the north, coming around the Cape of Good Hope is what keeps us awake at night. I wanted to mention, I can mention it in the slide actually, that Captain mentioned it theoretically in terms of the global trade routes, but that is like a real picture of the ships that are out there at sea. A normal non-maritimer, they usually get shocked to see that there are that many ships out there in the ocean because it's quite vast itself. So yes, it's quite busy out there. So how we monitor that area of responsibility that I've just shown you in the context of SAMSA and our mandate of ensuring safety of life at sea and prevention of pollution from ships, and also promoting our maritime interests, is we monitor it through our 24/7 operations center at MRCC located in Planterkloof with these key functions. Maintaining maritime domain awareness. We do collaborate with the Navy in terms of maritime security as well, and we do collaborate with the likes of TNPA and DFFE and other critical stakeholders. We coordinate maritime search and rescue in that area of responsibility as per the SASA Act. We monitor generally coastal and offshore maritime activities. We facilitate pre-arrival notifications for the Department of Transport's Maritime Security Coordination Center for vessels that are intending to come and call South African ports. And we also have a task of conducting oversight for safety of navigation in South Africa by prescribing standards for marine aids to navigation that TNPA colleague has mentioned already, including VTS, prescribing standards for ship routing systems, like your traffic separation schemes, areas to be avoided, etc. So how we do that is that SAMSA is a competent authority, like I said, in terms of the domestication of SOLAS Chapter 5. And then you can see in this slide, I've shown the various other key role players who are the implementers in their respective fields. Pertinent to today is the Hydrography, which draws its international mandate as far as maritime is concerned from SOLAS Chapter 5, Regulation 4 and 9, which talks to the promulgation of navigational warnings and the production of nautical charts and publications, respectively. Okay, so essentially, this is just a pictorial form of what I've just said in terms of where we draw our international mandate from. South Africa being party to the International Maritime Organization Convention, we've got an obligation to ensure that we give full and complete effect to all the IMO instruments that we are signatory to, and the Safety of Life at Sea Convention is one of them. So through the Safety of Life at Sea's Chapter 5, Regulation 9, we've got an obligation to ensure that we provide hydrographic services, and that is domesticated by the National Hydrographic Act 2019 in South Africa, which the Department of Transport has cooperation and agreement with the Department of Defense in terms of implementation, because that's where the skill sits. Okay, so that slide, I won't go through it all in the interest of time, but it just shows you the provisions in the SOLAS Convention, what the states undertake to do in terms of providing hydrographic services, and what are our international obligations for when the IMO comes and audits us at the end of the day. We've just undergone an IMSIS audit in 2023, Captain, yes, which the South African National Hydrographic Office and TNPA and the likes of DFFE, our key partners, were also part of that IMSIS audit. So we're busy responding to some of the findings that we got. That is just also the extract from the Hydrographic Act 2019, which actually provides for the establishment of the Hydrographic Office, especially for the purpose of implementation of the SOLAS obligations. Okay, I've put that slide there just to emphasize the fact that a ship is not designed to touch the bottom. We want ships to be floating at sea, and that's where hydrography is of importance, and having access to accurate hydrographic data becomes of importance to us, because when we have vessels on the SAMSA perspective that are sitting on the seabed or on the rocks, it's not good for us. So I've inserted a quote there by the former Secretary General of the IMO, which says, "All ships should avoid hitting the sides of the ocean, particularly the bottom side. Any ship that doesn't know how deep the water under its keel is has potential to land itself in trouble." And we know that South Africa has not been spared of this. Captain Naresh Singh actually alluded to the incident of the Snot. But for the purpose of the presentation today, because to go over incidents that we've had to tend to in South Africa, we will need a whole day. I think 2 days were taken last week to actually discuss matters pertaining to maritime emergency response last week in Kalefa. So hydrography and supporting shipping activity. Some of it was mentioned by the last speaker. I suppose it's the advantage of not being first, because I can just skip through some of the stuff because it's a bit mentioned. But essentially, just to re-emphasize that safety of navigation is key. When a ship leaves its departure port, the master of the vessel anticipates that everything is going to go smoothly from the departure port to its destination port. And key to that is having access to accurate information, and that is where the important role that is played by the hydrographers is commended. It's through those publications that the master and his team, or her team, can actually do proper passage planning and factor in efficiencies, etc., and make sure that they comply with all the international rules. Okay, so SAMSA is also the authority in South Africa that is responsible for the establishment establishment and monitoring of ship routing systems. But then in the port limits, of course, you've got the Port Authority that does the implementation and monitoring, but then setting of the standards as per the guidelines of the IMO is still our responsibility. As much as the legal mandate sits with the authority, being SAMSA, the implementation and the monitoring is a collaborative effort. We can never do it alone, and that's where I think collaboration has been mentioned so many times because it is really key. So I edit these slides just to show at least, especially people who have never been at sea. When I was at sea, and I mentioned that there are shipping lanes at sea, people used to give me a blank stare. Like, what do you mean there are shipping lanes at sea? So, ladies and gentlemen, those are the shipping lanes that are at sea to actually regulate traffic and monitor traffic to avoid accidents and incidents. It gets more complicated as you go into more congested areas, like in the likes of the Singapore Straits and in Europe, where they've got smaller areas and a bigger traffic density. We're actually fortunate in South Africa because of our landscape. We've got more ocean, not that restricted. So our routing systems are not as complicated as the one that you can see on the top right over there. We even have traffic circles, believe it or not. Okay. So on a higher level, there's always been a fruitful collaboration between the IMO and the IHO. And one of the successes in this collaboration has seen the development and the implementation of electronic navigational charts, including the ECDIS, the Electronic Chart Display and Information System. As we sit here today, it's actually a carriage requirement on sodas vessels to have ECDIS. And this was developed based on the IHO's S57 standard at the time. And yeah, it has made the lives of seafarers quite simpler. But this collaboration has not stopped because at the IMO they still want to advance the development of digitalization, because unfortunately the maritime world is not as digitalized as we would all like it to be at the moment. So conversations are still happening at the global stage in terms of how do we harmonize the sharing of data, and particularly between the ships and the shore. And that is where the S100 standard that already exists under the IHO becomes critical as well to assist the IMO with the goal that it has to harmonize digital data between ships and shore. So what the future looks like, or the future challenges that we can foresee in terms of hydrography as the users of the data. I didn't go into the intricacies of how hydrography works, I left that to the professionals. Captain Naresh also alluded to the growing size of ships, and that is, I think, the biggest challenge, one of the biggest challenges that we are having in general. Because globalization is a thing now. We all shop online and we expect our goods to be delivered to our doors, and how they are delivered, as we know that about 90% of global trade is carried by ships. So the more we shop, the bigger the businessmen will want their carriers, as we call them, to actually accommodate everything and everyone. Okay. Another challenge that is posed by having larger vessels, Captain Naresh also alluded to the fact that accommodating these long and wide and deep vessels in the South African context can be a bit of a challenge. I think the deepest port that she had, Captain, was about 18 meters, talking about container vessels. And as you know, in the recent past, well, I don't know if it's still recent, last year around about this time when we had challenges with containers falling over the side on the East Coast, Yeah, so when the containers or the ship loses its cargo over the side, it's not a normal occasion. The master of the vessel has to stop and think about the safety of his crew and the rest of the venture, because it's got impact on the actual stability of the vessel, and that's where it becomes crucial to ensure that we provide adequate places of refuge for potentially every size and type of vessel out there. And that's where hydrography and access to proper information comes in. So SAMSA is a regulatory body responsible for identifying and designating appropriate places of refuge in South Africa, and we can't do this alone. We need access to data for us to say, yes, you can use False Bay, yes, you can call into Algoa, and subsequently, if they need port services, we do collaborate with TNPA. Sustainability is a buzzword and the key word right now, because we want to make sure that all of us, when we do leave this earth, we leave it in a conducive manner for other generations to come. So pertinent to the subject of today is SDG 14 of life below water. So this slide just emphasizes the important work of hydrographers as it contributes to achieving the aims of this goal. So this is just in conclusion to say, as we celebrate World Hydrography Day 2025, may we continue to raise awareness of the important role that is played by hydrography in safeguarding maritime navigation and promoting sustainable use of our oceans. Accurate seabed mapping not only prevents accidents at sea, which is good for us, but it also supports responsible management of resources and the protection of our marine environment, which is our mandate number 2. Therefore, continuous support for hydrography, for hydrographic interventions and initiative is essential, and not only for maritime safety, but also to foster effective and ocean stewardship for future generations. And this includes investments to key technologies that are required by the hydrographers to make this life a reality. So in the shipping world, we've got a saying that says no shipping, no shopping, because 90% of the trade is carried by the ocean. But then if you look deeper into it, what enables shipping activity is hydrography. So for the purpose of today, I'm amending that slightly, not worrying it, Captain, before you tell on me. So I've said no hydrography means no shipping activity. And as we know, without shipping activity, we will have no shopping. Ladies and gentlemen, I thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much, Captain Mbagaza, for a concise, straight-to-the-point presentation. In a nutshell, what I picked up is that ship owners or masters, when they set sail from whichever part of the world to another point of the world, what makes them sleep well at night is to know that I'll be able to reach my destination without concerns of safety, because if there's sufficient mapping, it means ocean activity is multiplied, which ties in with the theme that we are gathered here today, which is seabed mapping enabling ocean mapping. We will not be wearing our gooses, we will not be wearing all this other expensive stuff, because most of it comes through the trade that is provided through the ocean. Thank you very much, Captain Mbagaza. Before we go for the break, we've got one more speaker. That's why now those students, we're going to science, we're going to now technical stuff that now the next speaker will be bringing to us. The next speaker that we're going to be calling is Dr. Isufo Halo from the Department of Forestry, Fisheries and Environment. A brief profile of Dr. Halo is that he is a production scientist in physical oceanography at the Department of Forestry, Fisheries and Environment in Cape Town. He has lectured in oceanography in the Department of Conservation and Marine Sciences at the Cape Peninsula University of Technology between 2015 and 2021. He is actually a research associate to the Nansen Tutu Center for Marine Environmental Research in the Department of Oceanography at the University of Cape Town. He is also an editor to the West Indian Journal of Marine Science. In September of 2024, Dr. Halo was the recipient of the Bjerknes Visiting Fellow Grant by the Bjerknes Center for Climate Research in the region of Bergen in Norway. His research interest is on regional modeling of oceanic mesoscale circulation in the greater Agalas current system. Ladies and gentlemen, please help me welcome Dr. Halo to the stage.
Good morning. Thank you very much, Program Director, for the presentation, and thank you everyone for being here. For protocols, I observe. Thank you for the invitation that you have given me to be here and speak about the oceanography on the greater Agalas current system. And why are we calling it a system and not just the Agalas current? And for the students, and many perhaps present here, what is oceanography? Well, I want to bring everyone into the same plane here, regardless of where you come from. Oceanography is the scientific study of the oceans. We apply the laws of the environment to understand what is actually happening in the oceans and what is the impact on people's lives. It's quite a broad concept. For this reason, oceanography has been divided in different branches. You find one that is about geological oceanography, which is actually dealing with the characteristics of seabed, how these influence the water circulation. And the other branch is called the chemical oceanography. It's dealing more with the chemistry of seawater. The other, biological oceanography, that is actually just dealing with the life in the ocean. And one very close to my heart is physical oceanography. It is dealing with the physical processes that are happening in the ocean, leading what happens when the current interacts with the waves, all those processes that have a strong impact on navigation, on the life. The physical processes are there to help us to understand how we can really address this. For this reason, the aim of this presentation is just to bring everyone into understanding what is really happening around our coastlines. You go outside, you will see the oceans. Few meters from here, we have the Agalas current. We can't see really with physical eyes, but what's actually happening in the water? What physical processes are playing there that really guarantees our lives here? Just to put this into perspective, about 73% of the water in the world, on the planet Earth, is just the oceans, is water. 73% of the Earth's surface is covered by water. The remaining 28 is just the dry land. What that means, actually, the oceans have this strong, overwhelming impact in our lives here on Earth. So we need to understand how the oceans work. So this will be the scope of my presentation. So I will move quite quickly over here, but just to tell you what is the mandate of the Department of Forestry, Fisheries and Environment in connection with the marine space. So we have the government mandate to manage the marine space. You want to use for your purpose, I want to use to my purpose. How can we use the same space without fighting? So the management of that space is required. Then we need to protect the ocean space. We've heard people this morning speak about the marine pollution. So we want to really make sure that the oceans are at the level that they will function well. The healthy state of the ocean matters. In so doing, we need also to conserve that space. Why? Today we are using, but we want generations that will come to be able to also enjoy the oceans that we have. Here is where the scientific research comes to the fore. For us to be able to deliver into these mandates, we need to do science. Now, the physical oceanography plays a crucial role. For us to be able to do science, we need data. How do we get the data? Well, we can go at sea with our vessels and make measurements and collect the data, bring it to the lab. In that data, then we try to extract the meaning of that data to generate information that can be informed to the government. As you can see, it's a difficult process. And there's limitations in going at sea and collecting data. Are there alternatives? Yes, there are some alternatives, but it doesn't close the gap. Some alternatives is just looking at the satellites in space that are actually roving the surface of the Earth and making some measurements. We go into these data centers, we collect that information. We also have some instruments, very much like the ones that are being disposed that we take at sea. We drop there. Sometimes we leave it there, and those instruments, they just keep floating around the ocean, making some measurements, and sending that information via satellite, and we analyze that data. Other equipments are meant to stand still in the ocean, and it will measure everything that comes passing through that instrument. So in a nutshell, we use all sorts of data that is out there, those generated locally, but also internationally, provided the data answers the questions that we want to address. And where do we do this? Well, South Africa has a very vast oceans. In the west coast of South Africa, we have the Atlantic Ocean. On the east coast, we have the Indian Ocean that goes from the east across to the south. But if you look at further south, you will find the Southern Ocean, which means we are surrounded by 3 different oceans, each of these with its own peculiarities that we need to understand. How do we extract information from the data? Here is is where one of my favorite diagrams in oceanography comes to the fore, the so-called stomal diagram, where in this horizontal line over here, we have the space scale that involves all the processes that are taking place in the ocean. As you can see, from 100 micrometers right up to 1,000 kilometers long. And on the vertical, we have the time scale. These are processes in the oceans at microseconds, but can extend all the way to 1,000 years, like very much a climate scale. So the beauty of this diagram helps us to actually identify and characterize a wider range of the things happening in the ocean, while at the same time, it exposes our weaknesses in terms of what we can measure, the science, the innovation, the technology is exposed by this diagram because it tells you what we are able to measure and what we are not able to capture. The region that has so much overlap, the so-called mesoscale, is the region that we are able to resolve very, very well. But how does this fit into the theme of our discussion this morning, speaking about oceanographic processes? I find it so appropriate to bring this map that shows the topography of the Earth, where just in the south and the east coast of South Africa, going all the way to Mozambique and into Kenya, is what we see in this map in your far right with red and yellow. It's actually inland. But now look at where it comes to green and blue. This is actually at the sea floor, where we can't see with our physical eye if we stand and look at the ocean. But when we do the mapping, we come to realize that, wow, it's more complex than I expected. We see chains, we see mountains, we see plateaus, we see ridges sitting at the seafloor. While they are sitting right there, they have such a powerful influence on how waters are moving at the sea surface, that the upper ocean is influenced by what is happening at the seafloor. So how is this affecting what we know in terms of Agalas current? This is one of beautiful diagrams that was published in 2006 by Professor Lucians back then. And ever since, we have been studying the processes in the area, and we are updating this knowledge. Very soon, a new diagram will be published that reveals the progress in terms of knowledge gains since 2006 to the present as we speak. But the main oceanographic features in these areas, as you can see, these long arrows are representing ocean currents. Then, between Mozambique and Madagascar, we see these circular features. Some of them are anti-clockwise and the others are clockwise. So there are different dynamics there. When these are spinning anti-clockwise, it means that they are quite warm features. While when they are spinning clockwise, they are cold. And as they propagate to the south, they arrive in Durban, the area where the Agalas currents start to form, and then they influence the behavior of the Agalas current. As you can see, by these lines going closely following the continental shelf, the Agalas current, there are places where it's quite meandering. Why is that so? Because of the change of the topography. This is a western boundary current that relies heavily on the continental slope to run. If you change the continental slope, you will change the behavior of the current, which means we need an accurate representation of the sea flow. That's why, with the theme of this presentation, seabed mapping, it's just appropriate that we review these processes. Hence, if we want to have a full understanding of the Agalas current, it has been established that we can't look at the Agalas current as an isolated individual. We need to look at it as a system, which includes the flow that is coming, that is feeding that current, coming from the Mozambique Channel in the south of Madagascar. But also we need to look at the downstreams where the flow goes into the South Atlantic and affects the behavior of the current. That's why it is important to look at the Agulhas current system. Now, let me share with you why we do this, why this is important for us to do it. I said at the outset of this presentation, the percentage between what is ocean, what is water, and what is dry land, and how the oceans overwhelmingly influence our lives inland. Let me isolate a few of these processes. Here, in this diagram, where you see the coastline of South Africa and the black contour there, that is the behavior of the Agulhas current, showing variabilities. When the strength of the current increases, you start to see meandering, and the inshore edge of the Agulhas current start now to interact with the coastline. That interaction to generate these circulation features on the continental shelf. So then, properties of water that are at subsurface are forced to reach the continental shelf. And because those waters are cooler, cold, because they have been away from that influence of solar radiation for many, many years, they are cold and bring these nutrients into the surface, and they just enhance the biological productivity on the shelves. So that the behavior of the current controls to some extent what is happening on the shelf. You go south, Agulhas current then loses the control from the topography because the continental shelf just ended at the southwestern tip of Agulhas Bank. So because the Agulhas current lost that topographic control, it goes kind of unstable mode. That instability forces that current to retroflect, and the bulk of the waters on the Agulhas current flows back into the Indian Ocean as the Agulhas return current. And the behavior of that current is also heavily influenced by the Agulhas Plateau, which is a bathymetric feature. Now, the process leads to waters from the Indian Ocean to go into the South Atlantic. And the mechanism that drives that inter-ocean exchange allows that water to propagate further north into the Atlantic, even reaching the North Atlantic Ocean, influencing the density structure of the water, affecting the conveyor belt that is a global thermoline circulation, which is a feature that regulates the climate that we enjoy. Yet, when you look at the Agulhas current on itself, you will see that there's always clouds on top of the current. The current is warm, and it is creating a great deal of evaporation. That process on itself regulates the rainfall patterns, especially on the coast. So the life of that farmer that relies heavily on the rain is very much modulated by the behavior of the currents, and it's connected somehow, that behavior, with the topographic features. That's why this is really important. There are many processes that influence the marine life, right out from the phytoplankton, that is very small cells in the ocean that we can't even see with our physical eyes, and affect all the way to the big fish, even the fishermen. So we are all involved in this net. Now, let me just tell you some case studies where we use the knowledge of bathymetry to be able to generate knowledge that can infer management. Right here along the northern coast of KwaZulu-Natal. We know that it is a marine protected area. The region is very high in biodiversity because of this many processes that are happening there, a combination of physical, chemical, biological processes making this area very interesting and very important for conservation matters. However, under the influence of climate change, many areas are suffering. But we see that the trend of that suffering is not the same. When we look at the northern part of the Indian Ocean, we contrast them with the southern part of the Indian Ocean on the Agulhas current. Right here, the Oceanography Marine Protected Area, where we have so many shelf-break canyons, which are these rifts on the seafloor that allows deep water that are colder to come into the surface. What makes that area special? Special in the sense that while the corals are dying on the northern Indian Ocean, the corals in South Africa, the coral reefs, are relatively well protected. So here we have two images that shows the top one is a coral that is alive, that is healthy. And the lower one is a coral that is dead because of the stress of warm waters. The waters here in this Mangaliso are acclimatized. What is driving that? We wanted to study this process to understand. So we needed data. It is very difficult to make measurements in areas where these canyons are because the complexity of the seafloor is very steep, and it is also difficult to measure those canyons. So we used a different tool. We used an hydrodynamic model to try to simulate. Now, this canyon, this example of a canyon, as you can see here, you see that these canyons are actually incisions that are sitting on the seafloor, and it becomes like a channel. And they established a connection between the deeper ocean and the shallow ocean close to the coast. Using these hydrodynamic models, we try to reproduce mathematically a topography of the region, right here on the KwaZulu-Natal. And we put this map in a 3-dimension. If you look at this map, the areas that are yellow and green are places where we have incisions on the coastline. And what those incisions do, they allow water to flow through these channels. They are forced to go all the way up into the continental shelf. They affect the circulation patterns of the waters. And it is that cold water that is coming through those submarine canyons that are helping actually to acclimatize the water, preventing the death of corals. So having that knowledge on how the physical mechanisms are driving this uplifting of waters that are called the upwelling becomes essential to advise management of the area. And this slide here shows the complexity of the flow that we managed to observe by simulating with hydrodynamic models. While the continental slope shows a flow going to the south because of the Agalas current, at the continental shelf, the flow on the annual basis is going to the north. We have the coastal current. The last example here that I will be very brief is the experience that we had at the Marion Island and the Prince Edward, which are subantarctic islands in the Southern Ocean. Their geographic location is displayed by this little box in this map that is there in the middle. What you see there, those penguins there, it is just an indication that it is a home for a lot of marine life, many animals. It was declared a marine protected area. Under those, the FFE was mandated to study the oceanography of the area because the place is like a sentinel for climate studies. That is the case because it's an area very remote for human interference. So the anthropogenic influence on climate is relatively reduced. We are able to see what is happening there in the contrast then with what is happening in other areas and to see how humans' activities are impacting. We said, okay, we need a study. When we wanted to do the study, we realized that, okay, if we want to do this well, we need information about the bathymetry. So the seabed mapping came to the fore. How to do this? We are very limited in data. Okay, we can do this by using satellite data. Okay, let's use satellite data. We observed different satellite products. We started to see each of these products giving different topographic information on the bathymetry. And some of these are showing channels in places where there's no channel. What to rely? This was really a problem because that gap of knowledge was affecting the designing of instruments that are to be deployed to keep monitoring the flow, the currents of it. Okay, because of that problem, we decided that every time that the Agala's vessel 2 goes into Marion, let's do the mapping of the seabed. So while the vessel is waiting for the researchers that are on land, so we take the vessel, we go around, we collect the data, we start to make a mapping of this area. This is the product that we have received so far. From 2013 to 2022, all the data that has been gathered gave us the panel that we see in A. The all white area, blank, is where there's no data. There was no data. In 2023, 2024, there was a campaigns going to Marion Island. We took advantage of that to do the mapping. And gradually we are filling the gaps in data. We start to see that, wow, there's a banks, there's a channels present here, and all that data, all that knowledge becomes important for management. Where do we store this information? Annually, the Department of Forestry, Fisheries and Environment, we publish what we call our annual science reports. I invite everyone, if possible, please, read these reports, get familiarized with the work that we are doing in order to understand what is happening in our oceans. This makes my last slide. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you very much, Dr. Halo, for a very scientific presentation, but yet message was delivered to the audience. Seabed mapping, which is the theme for Well Hydrography 2025. You brought it nicely home to indicate to us that there is interconnectivity and significant role that bathymetric data plays in other areas of study or ocean activity, i.e. you can now, with thorough, sufficient mapping, you can study the behavior of currents. You can study the biodiversity, the influence of each other by just based on the topographic bathymetric mapping that you are actually seeing on the seabed. So thank you very much for that presentation. I was expecting it to be very technical, but I understood very well, and I believe that the audience felt the same. Thank you very much for that presentation. And ladies and gentlemen, I think at this point that is where we take the break for tea, and then we will reconvene here at 11:30 for the lecture, hydrographic lecture by the National Hydrography.